Welcome viewers. On behalf of Iravati Research and Communication Center, this is Pratim Ranjan Bose. In this episode of CEO Speak, I have with me Sri Jayant Singh, Vice Chairman of Inland Waterways Authority of India. Mr. Singh is an Indian Railway Traffic Service official who has taken charge of IWAI last year to give shape to a transport revolution in India. Welcome, Mr. Singh.
Namaskar, Mr. Bose.
River transport, as you are aware, is one of the oldest medium for movement of passenger and trade. In India in particular, with its 4,000-year-old history in maritime transport, river transport held the key for inland movement of goods. The Indus Valley archaeological sites of Lothal and Dholavira in Gujarat are all connected by rivers. With a host of perennial rivers, including the mightiest of all, Ganga and Brahmaputra, inland water transport, or IWT, played a crucial role in the economic growth of the eastern and the northeastern region in the past. All great cities and ancient trading hubs, including Kolkata, Varanasi, Guwahati, are connected by river. With river came the opportunity for multimodal transport. Till 19th century, Rangpur, now in Bangladesh, was a major trading center, catering up to Bhutan and Tibet in the Himalayas and the entire undivided Bengal, Bihar and UP through the river. The arrival of railways could have widened the multimodal opportunity. However, the partition and complete neglect to river transport in independent India did serious harm to the prospect of cheap movement of goods. As against 20% in Germany, 32% in Bangladesh, rivers accounted for barely 0.15% of goods transport in India in 2004. The damage was most evident in India-Bangladesh trade, though the two countries are connected by over 50 officially recognized rivers, including Ganga and Brahmaputra. Trade was dependent on land routes, leading to congestion and high cost. Officially, the two countries had a river transport protocol signed way back in the 1970s. There was a state-owned organization too to take forward the inland water transport causes, but nothing really moved on ground until the incumbent Narendra Modi government came in power in 2014. IWAI, which in form is similar to National Highways Authorities, was formed by Rajiv Gandhi government in 1986. Atal Bihari Vajpayee government started thinking positively about river transport but couldn't do much for the cause. The shift took place when Modi government launched the Kolkata-Varanasi Jalmarg Vikas project in 2016. The project will be completed in 2023, that is next year. Over time, more components are added to it. The most crucial of them is the Kolkata-Guwahati connectivity through Sirajganj, Daikwa in Bangladesh. Kolkata-Dhaka IWT connectivity was already there, and it is now extended up to Dhaka. River transport is now an important component in India-Bangladesh trade. It will be an important vehicle in north and east connectivity once Varanasi-Kolkata-Guwahati route is operationalized, expectedly next year. It is an important component in PM Gati Shakti project that aims to reduce the transport costs through efficient utilization of multimodal options. Kolkata is set to play anchor role in this new age logistics plan. With this background, let me turn to Mr. Singh, the man who is in charge of giving shape to a dream. So the first question here, what is the status of the much awaited Varanasi-Kolkata National Waterways route? As per original plan, you should build 5 terminals en route. Most of them were already completed. How many are operationalized and what is the current volume of traffic? Over to you, sir.
So, Mr. Bose, you rightly set the context that in the Jalmar Vikas project or National Waterway one between Varanasi and Haldia is more than a flagship. It is kind of, a demonstration and a showcasing of the commitment of the government to actually promote waterways as an important mode, as a complementary mode to the rail and the road. And coming back to your question specifically, what we had envisaged here were three things. When we actually look at waterways as a transit, as a transportation, as a mode of transport, it has basically three broad components. One is, of course, the fairway, that is the water, because unless you have a fairway like the railway, the permanent way, or the highway, the road, nothing can move. So, development of fairway. The second component was getting the terminals in place, small river ports, big river ports, with the accent on multimodal connectivity. And the third, of course, is getting some sort of an ecosystem for vessels and navigation. So, and this has been a very iterative process because although river transport goes back, but when I say river transport, it is transport along the river, longitudinal, not cross river movement, goes back to millennia. But of course, now with the new technologies and urgency of time, the kind of investment that ought to have happened did not. So a lot of learning is through iteration. We just cannot, cut and paste the template of Germany or Belgium or even China or the US. So a lot of learnings are happening. So what we have done so far since the project was conceptualized and inaugurated, we've finished the construction of the three critical terminals at Varanasi, Sahibganj, and Haldia, respectively. And the focus always was to construct and then give it to private operators under public-private partnership to harness their efficiency, because the government gets into the business of conducting a business, the kind of nimbleness and flexibility that is required, unfortunately, is not there, no matter how well you design it. So Haldia, thankfully, because of the whole ecosystem there, we found bidders there and it has been awarded. It will be operationalized very soon. And as far as Sahibganj is concerned, Sahibganj, again, we've had two rounds of bidding, though we did not elicit the bid did not elicit the kind of response that we were anticipating. But then, as I said, the fault was more, I would say, in the maybe the design, that we envisaged a lot of investment from the private sector. Now, let us understand one thing, that despite the obvious advantages that inland waterways confers, the fact is that it is still a very untried and untested mode. There are a lot of uncertainties. There is a time lag and there is an absence of ecosystem. So we have to really move along on all fronts. So if I expect today that even a big player to put in about a few hundred crores of investment in terms of capital equipment, land, etc., around the terminal, that's not so easy to come by. So what we have done is, rather than running it ourselves, we have tweaked the model, and we will be giving on an operation and maintenance contract under PPP. And so far, the responses have been very good. So the construction and operationalization of the terminal is well underway. As far as the third and the most critical component is concerned, which is the maintenance of fairway. So I'm very happy that from Patna until Haldia, navigation, etc., is never a problem. Not only navigation during lean season, but also night navigation, as was evident in the movement of the two trial vessels that we sent, one to Guwahati and one to Haldia. And very soon we'll be starting a fortnightly service between Patna, Haldia, and God willing, Patna, Guwahati. But the section between Varanasi and Patna, which is normally during lean season, is riddled with all sorts of issues. That also we are undertaking. Now, here is a challenge, and I'm glad that I'm getting this platform to articulate the kind of geographical challenges that lie in the sector. You see, Indian river valleys and rivers are not narrow and deep. They are very broad and they are shallow. They carry a lot of silt load. And because of the heavy silt load and predominantly a very alluvial hinterland, they meander, change course a lot. So much so that I remember my terminal at Bihar. In fact, let me have it coming. Both terminal at Kalughat in Bihar, which is on the northern bank of Ganga, the construction is underway, and it will be commissioned by 2023 November, December. So the Kalughat terminal, when I first went there during lean season or during peak season, and when I came back, I mean, the river had receded by a few kilometers. So this is the kind of quantum of challenges that we face in silt management, sediment management. But that said, I mean, these challenges are not insurmountable. It's just that finding the most optimal mix of fairway of silt management, sediment management through submerged drains or bandaling and dredging. So west of Patna, going up to Varanasi, hopefully by May, we would have conducted a detailed study to find out what model is good. I mean, the model that we have adopted east of Patna that template can be copied and pasted. But as I said, sometimes best is the enemy of good. So we are looking for the most optimal model there because there are cost implications here. So the targeted date of completion of Jalmar Vikas is 31st December 2023. So by 31st December 2023, our fairway, our terminals, our night navigation, everything would be functional. At the same time, what we are doing, which is slightly part of it is under Jalmar Vikas project and part of it is being done outside, is we are looking at some better model of assisting private sector in procurement of vessels. You see, what COVID has done is that, in fact, you know about how the dynamics of inland waterways work. It is a very wafer thin margins, and it's on a very low cost threshold. So if we expect the transporters to come up with state of the art vessels, etc., bringing those kinds of investment, there has been a very pronounced reluctance among them to invest. So that is why on the if you see between Triveni and Sagar, you predominantly see Bangladeshi vessels, the low cost shallow draft vessels. There aren't too many Indian vessels because these vessels are costly to build, costly to maintain, costly to man. So this is the third dimension, the third pillar, as it were, of inland waterway that we are looking to address by having schemes and programs that incentivize either the operator of the vessel to invest in an inland water vessel, or incentivizing the shipyard by means of some viability gap funding. So these options are open. And although there are some tried and tested models worldwide, but definitely we would like to have one or two of our own. We have, in fact, on our website, if you see, we got some very good vessel designs of about 8 or 10 different kinds of inland water vessels, from bulk carriers to container carriers to car carriers, flotilla of barges and tugs and everything, and with the copyright, so that if any shipyard felt that it could manufacture, it could just do it without paying any copyright or anything. But as I said, this industry works at a very low threshold of technology and economics. So far this thing hasn't happened. So this handholding would also be provided by us. And God willing, I think within a year or two, you would see these some tangible improvements here. That said, now let me tell you one more bit of statistic, which would actually impart a sense of optimism to the otherwise the challenging picture that I have painted. Is that this sector, despite these challenges and at some places geographical and other institutional handicap, is still growing. Between last year and this year, our growth rate is more than 25%. Over the last 4 or 5 years, we are growing at over 11%. No mode is growing the way we are.
This is CAGR.
Year-on-year growth. Okay. Yes, CAGR, compounded annual growth rate. That's right.
Right. 11% CAGR.
Yeah.
In volume traffic.
Yeah, the volume. Then, in fact, and it has really picked up in the month of February and March. So by the time this financial year end, our numbers would be even better.
Okay. Sir, you have raised, actually some of the questions that I could have asked, you actually answered them. Now, first, I'm just clarifying. Number one is originally the terminals were supposed to be operated through PPP mode. Now you are going from straight O&M contracts, right?
No, they are even O&M contracts are, see, PPP is a spectrum. There are 11 or 12, 15, 20 different kinds of models. You start with something as extreme as design, build, own, operate, right? Then design, build, own, operate, transfer. Then design, build, operate, transfer. Then operate, maintain, and develop. Then operate and maintain. So it is a spectrum. So we tried at the higher end of the spectrum, but given the response of the market,
what was the perceived model? What was the originally designed model?
Original was what is called the operate, maintain, and develop. which meant
Okay.
that in case a certain
They have
quantum
to
of traffic
invest
was reached,
also.
yeah, the concessionaire would invest also. But you see, the thing is like any other, this is a capital, it's a very capital intensive
No,
sector.
sir, it is completely understandable. We have a here example here in road construction. As long as we left it to the BOOT mode, it didn't, it collapsed. So now we have gone for
Ji.
complete EPC model, and it is working very fine. So we have to understand that infrastructure is a long gestation project. So private capital.
And there's another, other than the geographical and other uncertainties, you see, the problem is the cost of finance today. Cost of finance. And let us also understand one thing, that today the biggest challenge as far as long lead logistics is concerned is the time criticality of the time factor. So even if you're moving bulk things like fertilizers and food grain and coal, your consigners are, they are expecting the time to be a critical thing there. So either you give them fast transit or you give them very, very cheap transit. So somewhere we have to find. So as I said, this whole sector, we are going to do it iteratively. There are multiple iterations that will happen. And we have just started.
It's a trial and error
another
method.
point, in fact, Mr. Bose, I would like through your, channel, your program, I want to convey that this sector requires a considerable amount of hand-holding from the government. It took China the kind of modal share that it has, about more than 4 decades of very intensive hand-holding by the government, and that too when they already had a very vibrant ecosystem on the Yangtze. Number one. Number two, we have a certain critical mass of vessels. We have a certain critical mass of transit on waterways. But the kind of the modern technologies, the the GPS-driven technology, night navigation, safety, it's a safety requirement, etc., etc. These come at a cost,
Right.
and so this is also
what I understand from your
steady and gradual. Yeah.
What I understand, what he was trying to say is that when we are starting late when compared to many other countries.
Yeah, we are starting late. Yes.
Now there is an advantage for the late starter. That is, provided
you can leapfrog.
Yeah, provided he adopts the latest technology, right? So the challenge is not merely starting, is not as simple as, putting your goods on a country boat and taking it along. There is some more to it, because finally it has to compete with road traffic, with rail traffic, and there are many other complications. So fully understandable. If you can kindly, so from your whatever you said, there were a couple of things. One is I understand you are now planning about VGF, viability gap funding. It is already a very workable model. Whether it will be only for procuring vessels or for manufacturing or for simply for operations, because if we look at RCS, Uran RCS, it is on VGF only. So this is a new, absolutely path-breaking project. This is something new that we have to introduce in the system. I mean, it is quite understandable that there has to be some kind of handholding. And we already have various manufacturing PLI-like schemes. So I would just like you to clarify that what are in the consideration.
So there are two models, as I said. One would basically, coming to your first question, if I were to answer it crisply in a sentence or two, is that this viability is towards the side of manufacturing and procurement only, not for operations. Because one thing we have to understand that for whatever the long-term benefit to the economy, etc., that a particular mode may confer, the fact is that it has to be acceptable to the trade.
Absolutely.
You see, I'm not running an inland water transport corporation. I'm not looking at the bottom line. If it is good, trade will take it.
Right.
By offering some sort of a viability gap funding in the realm of manufacturing and in the realm of procurement, what I do is I'm able to cushion the burden of the initial investment that small scale operators or shipbuilders have. So there are very widely used model. In fact, the wet lease model that is followed by the airline industry is the case in point here. That if we retain the vessels in the books of the shipyards and take them on wet lease from them and give on bareboat chartering for operation, that should be. I mean, again, I'm not saying this is something I have done very empirically to really say, but it sounds just too good to be true. That we procure vessels on wet lease from shipyards. So shipyards are comfortable that, okay, they have a steady order from a government entity. So there they can raise finances then, be it the government, public sector shipyard or private sector shipyard, if they're guaranteed कि भाई इनको इतना order मिल रहा है सरकार से, तो even banks would be confident, because the reluctance of financial institution to finance inland vessels is a major handicap, and I don't blame them also. I mean,
No, there is no way. If I
what will
were
you
a
do with
banker,
a
I
vessel?
wouldn't have been so ready to finance to something which is
Exactly.
not tested.
So this offsets that apprehension of the banker also. So the shipyard has a steady order. It is able to obtain finances at a reasonable rate. The ownership, actual ownership, lies with the shipyard, so it ensures quality, because the ownership and maintenance would be with the shipyard, and the operator then can focus on what the strength that he brings, that is operations of vessel, what model you adopt. So that is how we are trying to, I mean, this is the model we have. So
Right.
definitely one of the models is going to be this. But
Right.
that said, again, you see, it's a very chicken and egg situation. कि भैया पहले जहाज लाएंगे कि ट्रैफिक आएगा, पहले ट्रैफिक आएगा कि जहाज लाएंगे. So we have to kind of do it cyclically.
It is not going to be, like you make a plan of building a plant and then the plant is coming up and start production. It is not a plug and play kind of situation. It's something new.
Absolutely no plug
There
and play
has
here.
to be.
And if you recall, when we started our NHAI project, the Golden Quadrilateral and all these projects, I mean, it took about a decade for that sector, for the whole EPC sector and the DBOT sector to kind of stabilize. I remember my wife was doing some land procurement. She was the district magistrate of a district in Rajasthan next to Jaipur. And most of the big players, the guys who were actually building those expressways, there were hardly any Indian company. Most of them were foreign companies. Their subcontractors were Indian, but over a period of time, these subcontractors have become big.
And,
so that
and
is how the ecosystem developed.
Then came the reverse learning. The foreign companies, very top foreign companies who entered, they suffered in Indian condition. I know in Northeast. And then we saw the collapse of contractors. So huge learning that went through for almost.
So we should not over leverage. In fact, that is also, Mr. Bose, a very important lesson. We should not be over leveraging. I would rather play it safe, be steady. I'll be very happy with a 8 to 10, 11% growth, as long as I'm able to sustain it and diffuse it.
And create the ecosystem,
yeah.
Make people interested about it. That is, market making is more important. Thank you, sir. Thanks.
Absolutely.
That's a very nice approach. So I also saw in your site, you are inviting tenders for community jetties and etc. So I understand these are more for across the board, across the river movement or something like that. Is it so?
So the answer to your question is actually your last remark. Just before you ask this question, the answer lies in that. When we talk of creating an ecosystem here, so creating an ecosystem, the first and foremost ingredient is to get the communities that are actually along the river get connected to the river in a more meaningful and in a manner that imparts some sort of a value addition to their lives.
Make the river important to their lives.
Yeah, make river important. They should not see as our minister, that I really like some of the ministers who are jo ekdam zameen se jude hote hain, people who are really sons of the soil. So Mr. Sonwal said something very nice. He said that, Assam, because of the flooding, etc., Brahmaputra, many a time people take that river for granted and treat it as a curse, not realizing that a source of fresh water is like Amrit, so to speak. So how to give a meaningful connection to their life? So that is why we have this concept of Arth Ganga or JMVP2, wherein what we have done is we are building about 60 community jetties in UP, Jharkhand, Bihar, and Bengal, 5 Ro-Ro terminals. through which we want to actually give some sort of a last mile connectivity to the local trade, horticulturists, small farmers, and artisans. So if we have a facility whereby mechanized vessels can berth easily, and you have a round the clock navigation along that river with good lighting, you have a good approach road, good access to that jetty, it goes a long way in actually making you connected to the market better and in bringing about efficiencies in your daily life. Now, again, the challenge, as I said, is the geography. And honestly, since I'm neither a civil engineer nor an expert in hydrology, I mean, the kind of designs that we are having to, virtually reinvent the whole concept of floating pontoon, because between lean season and peak season, the width of the river shrinks by, between peak season and lean season, the width of the river shrinks by about 10, 15, 20%. The depth, more importantly, the depth goes
If
up
you
and
if
down
you
by
go
10 to
to if
15.
you go to northeast, if you look at Brahmaputra, the width shrinks by 50%.
Yeah. So we are in the process of again. So my first lot of jetties that we are designing, the tenders are out. In fact, the submission date is tomorrow. So we have designed some sort of a jetty wherein we are using the standard the HDPE design. But what we have done is we've increased the thickness to make it more robust, and we have reinforced it with steel. The reason being that even these small jetties, people will be bringing their two-wheelers or even their Tata Ace Chota Hathis or autos and all to be able to connect to the river. So this is the kind of
It
thing we are
kind of
doing. The
Roro.
60
It will be
jetties
kind of Roro, right?
for Roro operations also, and even longitudinally if they wish to go. I mean, and another good thing about this project, in fact, I'm so glad you brought it up, is that it is not something which IWI will run. Our designers will design it, build it, and even maintain it for 2 years and hand it over to the local self-government bodies, either the Panchayati Raj institutions or the urban local bodies to run it, so that the sense of community ownership is instilled right from the start and they are able to maintain it. Of course, we will do hand-holding for 2 years so that, they know what all is required. And the life of these
I
jetties,
have a
these are
question
not
here,
very
sir.
expensive.
I have a
Huh?
question here. The question is,
Ji,
you
bataye.
see, if we look at informally, the people have been living with rivers. There were,
Yeah, they have
there
been.
may not be good jetties, but there were jetties, makeshift jetties. Particularly if we talk about, say, Kolkata area. I mean, Kolkata and its suburbs, we have a history of movement, and there was a lot of ship repairing facilities on the Ganges.
Ji.
Some are still there in very rundown condition. And then across the river movement is very high, multimodal, the entire suburban traffic, people come
Absolutely.
from Srirampur or Rishra, they are coming to Howrah station, and instead of taking the bus, they are taking a ferry across the river,
Yeah,
and then taking
myself
the
traveled.
bus.
My uncle was a manager in jute mill from Risha to Havra across. I've done a lot of these movements on launch.
Right now so it was already there. Now my point is, when you are bringing, now that the river is a recognized highway, it was not so. No one was bothered about the river in the past. Now that the river is a recognized highway, and there will be a lot of movement from, from end-to-end movement, etc., for by apparently with time by bigger vessels, better vessels. What is going to happen with the regulation, including insurance? I mean, what if a country boat sinks or a smaller thing comes and conflicts with a bigger vessel? If there can be a chaos, if you allow all the Chota Hathis to move on the highways, there can be a sure chaos.
It's risky, yes, absolutely. And every year we have so much loss of life and property because of this. Absolutely. So unless we have a robust regulatory framework, the sector really cannot grow for two reasons. A, safety issue is, of course, number one. Number two is the finance issue. In absence of any set of rules and regulation, the banks would be very reluctant to finance it, right? And we won't have the kind of shift of a trade, an intermodal shift by the industry and trade also to waterways. So to address this issue, I mean, a lot of work has been done. A lot of work is to be done, but a lot of work has been done. So if you recall, there used to be an Inland Vessels Act 1917, which provided the overarching framework for management and regulation of inland water transport in India. And what I'm happy, I mean, not that I'm not, there's no credit to me. In fact, groundwork was done by my predecessors, and a lot of work has been done by my colleagues here. Is that we managed to pass the Inland Vessels Act 2021 in both houses of the Parliament last year. Now, good thing about the process was that it was an extremely iterative process. I mean, the amount of consultations that we had with the, the transport department, water transport departments in Bengal, in Assam, in Goa, in Maharashtra, in Gujarat, in Kerala, in Tamil Nadu, in Andhra, multiple rounds with the shipbuilders, owners association. So we got the passage of the act done in November 2021, I think October or November 2021. And based on that, we have formulated a very comprehensive set of inland waterway rules based on the act. Now the draft rules have been circulated. They've been vetted by the law ministry. They've been cleared by the finance ministry. And this also went back and forth with the states. I remember एक chapter, एक clause के पीछे बहुत झगड़ा भी होता था, because you see what happens, as I stated in the beginning, any new act, especially that brings a little bit of, a stringency in operation, stringency in regulation. This comes with a cost. Be it the cost of manpower, be it the cost of operation, be it the cost of the vessel per se. So this is going to be.
No one likes to be disciplined.
And not only that, another problem, this is like the Motor Vehicles Act. So the formulation of rules, etc., everything has been, the central database will be maintained in Delhi. And like the Vahan and the Sarthi models that we have adopted for road transport, it will be a IT-driven thing where the registration and subsequently insurance, etc., would be with the state government authorities. Now, herein lies another challenge. States like Bengal, to some extent Assam, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Kerala, Goa, they have, because of their legacy issues and everything, they have good systems in place already. And in fact, in some respect, they are even ahead of us. The problem lies in states where there is considerable movement happening in the unorganized sector, and we have not been able to regulate it the way we would like to. Bihar hai, Eastern UP hai, Jharkhand hai, Odisha hai, even Andhra hai. So this definitely is going to be a challenge. But as I said, since the mandate here of inland waterways is to create this whole ecosystem, so this would be definitely a long haul. But we are quite sanguine, because in the long run, everybody gains if you have this set of rules, as you rightly said, for the reasons of safety, for reasons of finance, and for the reasons of safety, the availability of capital. If we have these set of rules, etc., in place, and the honorable minister is going to launch the rules sometime in the second week of April. So we will have this, and
so
within a year
rules
or two,
will be,
sure we'll be able to see
rules will be announced in the second week of April. That is what you say.
Yeah, I think so. Sometime around that time. Yeah.
Sir, there were two. I remember there were two structural obstructions on NW1. I mean, henceforth, after this, we will move to NW2. One was the locks in Farakka, which were old and inefficient. And there were dredging requirements for removing shoals or making way through the shoals in Ganga. I believe you, without mentioning them, you touched upon that part, but Farakka barrage has been a major bottleneck. I mean, often movement beyond Farakka, because the barrage has impacted the river morphology also. Let us accept it as a matter of fact. When you put an obstruction, the morphology will be impacted. So how about these two projects? Are they moving on time?
So good question, because
also the shoal dredging part had some in India. There are many people, and so some people started talking about environment. Now, historically, though, it is proved that the more there is traffic on the river gets better.
Yeah, it does. Because there are hardly any discharges. In fact, the mandate of our project is actually all our vessels, all our terminals, we are getting these biodigesters and all these kind of things installed. So they take care of all these eventualities. But coming to, I would answer your question in two parts. First, I'll talk about the shoals and the issue of navigation law, and then I'll talk about the environmental issue. So as regards navigation law, as you rightly said, the success of this transit between Sahibganj, Patna, Varanasi to Haldia is entirely predicated on the capacity and the efficiency of the navigation lock at Farakka. So as part of the Jalmarg Vikas 1, we are fabricating and installing a new lock. So that lock is already, 90% of the work is already done, but the critical 10%, which is actually going to determine it is on the way. In fact, I was in Farakka a couple of weeks back. I spent couple of days there.
I saw your picture on
So
social
I'm
media.
quite hopeful by the time Durga Puja ends, we should be able to start the live trials and everything, and hopefully we'll be able to commission it by this calendar year 100%. In fact, उससे पहले भी काफी chance है that the kind of momentum that we have picked up in the last about 15-20 days, we are able to sustain it. So that is one. And as you rightly said, the bends and the shoals, it's crazy. I told you I'm not from this maritime background, and one of the critical issues at the new navigation lock at Farakka was the bend correction work that had to happen. And because we are looking at even the POL traffic, the POL traffic, the container vessels negotiating NW1. So bend correction had to happen. If you don't do that, vessels with longer keel length would not be able to negotiate. So we were just studying and watching that shoal. Now, funny as it may seem, the bend, which had to be actually physically scoured and excavated and cleared, is down by more than 50% in the last about 6 to 7 months. Okay. So what we'll have to do is really watch it, minimize ho jaye. We'll do the the fairway, the dredging part of it and everything, and do whatever to kind of maintain that fairway so that we are able to do the bend correction. So that work will happen side by side as we'll be doing the testing of the new lock. The old lock, the functional lock, which is still operational, overhauling of that is also a part of the Jalmarg Vikas project too. So we have entrusted the work to a consultancy comprising some very senior officers, retired officers of Central Water Commission and irrigation entities. And their detailed, the whole scope, etc., what exactly is to be done has come out. And I'm very happy to say, though initially I was slightly skeptical because this is a challenging work. But the way they've gone about it, I'm happy it's very professional. So that the moment we commission the new lock, the repair of the old lock would start. So hopefully by mid-2024 or end of 2024, we'll have both the locks functional at Farakka.
So what is happening is that, so there will be adequate redundant capacities at the gate.
That has to be there, yes.
Now, the next part, the more rather that is nowadays people talk more about that, partly because the minister is the Sonowal is from that part, and partly also because the northeastern region had been in the news in very recently, last 10 years or so. Otherwise, it was always in the news for wrong reasons. So about the connectivity to Guwahati through Bangladesh, through the new protocol route, the dredging at Sirajganj-Doikhawa stretch is considered very crucial. I think there will be requirement of dredging even above that in the Indian part. But this part is crucial, and it is a joint venture of India and Bangladesh. Now, generally, Indian projects in Bangladesh do suffer the time delays. How is the status of this particular project?
I'm familiar with the difficult stretches, and bridging in Bangladesh there are a couple of World Bank projects going on. There are a couple of bilateral projects going on between India and Bangladesh, and whatever institutional knowledge that Bangladesh has generated over the years, they're putting that to use, and our dredgers, etc., are working. But this definitely is a challenge. But the good thing is that we have now narrowed it down to those certain critical stretches. Once we are able to address those, like Sirajganj-Doikhawa, the no man's land between Dhubri and Chilimari, and between Zakiganj and Narayanganj, Zakiganj, and then connectivity towards with on what is called the river Kushiara, as Barak is known when once it enters Bangladesh. So those stretches have been identified. And our friends in BIWTA, now BIWTA has a couple of advantages that they have been doing this kind of fairway maintenance for a long time. And given their dependency on the ecosystem, on the riverine ecosystem, they would definitely be they would definitely be a little more proactive. And now as the Bangladesh economy grows, India is a big market, would be a big market. As it is, that we have our commodity profile on the Indo-Bangladesh protocol route has changed. It's changing gradually and changing for the better. Earlier, it was only fly ash and only fly ash. Now, fly ash, coal, garments, cotton
Metals,
bales, food
food
grains, whole lot
grains.
of stuff, is moving. So sometimes what happens is the demand from the market itself stimulates. So, if I keep, pestering BIWT, ki bhai ye karao, it won't have that kind of an impact as demand from the trade. So that is happening, very much a work in progress. And I said, we have identified those critical stretches. What we really have to do is whatever the joint learnings, be from Bangladesh and India side, we have to work in synergy here. So it is not only about, connecting Ganga, Brahmaputra, Northeast and all that, but also, making the Northeast market available and giving some sort of a connectivity from Bangladesh to our Northeastern states. I mean, trade benefits everybody, right? So that is definitely a work in progress. And we have an institutional mechanism. We have the secretary level and the, IWT protocol, PIWTT is there. So at least we have identified those critical stretches. We have identified the issues, and the rest is all about detailing and how we sort it out. So it is a work in progress, and it's progressing. And it's progressing. Maybe trade these days is slightly more demanding, but given the kind of geographical and even government procedural delays, I mean compulsions that are there. So given those kind of handicaps, we are progressing fairly okay. So luckily the senior officials in BIWT and the ministry, they are known. I mean, we are all on, first name basis. So that really helps.
Now, just another question on whatever you said on NW2 and connectivity to Guwahati. When should this project be? What is the official date of operationalizing? Target date for ending this project, and
which project?
How is the status? Kolkata-Guwahati connectivity.
See, Kolkata-Guwahati connectivity, we've done 2 trial runs. We've moved a cargo of Tata Steel, and we've been moving the over-dimensional consignments, and we just moved that food grain from Patna to. So that movement is already there. As far as the scheduled service, starting a scheduled service, I won't be able to put a date, but we want to do it soon. In fact, Minister is really pressing us hard on that. But that will again will happen simultaneously with the operationalization of the Guwahati terminal on a PPP mode. Guwahati is a beautiful terminal at Pandu. It's got a beautiful railway siding, rail connectivity. It's right in the city. It's got a nice approach. It's got good jetties for cargo vessels as well as for passenger vessels. And the water availability from Dhubri to Guwahati is not a problem. So these 2 things, the operationalization of the terminal at Pandu in Guwahati, dredging and the
terminal is now operated by IWAI, if I'm not wrong.
Right now we are doing it. Yeah, we are doing it, but we would definitely like a private partner to come in, because the kind of, see, as I told you, we are not Indian Water Transport Corporation of India.
It should not be.
Multimodal.
I know.
Multimodal transport requires a lot of good, liaison with road, liaison with this thing. We just don't have that kind of capacity yet. So
no, the government doesn't. Government normally cannot have that bandwidth of operating in the market.
Totally, yes.
So, what is the? Did you tender Pandu? Did you invite tenders on Pandu?
No, not yet. We haven't. In fact, Dhubri and Pandu, that is Guwahati. And then once our the multimodal terminal at Jogi Ghopa is commissioned, one at Jogi Ghopa, we'll be tendering, but we'll be doing all 3 individually, because they have a different hinterland, they have a different stream of traffic. But Pandu should be happening very soon. In fact, ideally I would have liked कि April में हो जाता, March, April में. लेकिन अभी I really can't put a date to it. Designing, there is no standard template. The biggest problem in this sector is there is no model concession
no model, nothing
here.
Nothing. And it was
Acha,
going
फिर
on pretty
although
in Assam, they say
Acha, not
slowly.
only that, the consultants, all the big names, the big four and the little four and everybody, they are also doing, they are hardworking, bright guys, but कोई sectoral experience है नहीं किसी को इतना. So everything, we are doing in fits and starts iterative, but I think this is the beauty and the challenge of it. I mean, I'm sure whatever our learnings from Sahibganj, Haldia and Varanasi, we'll be able to put it to good use. In fact, the tender document for Pandu, when I had a look at it, I immediately could point out 3 or 4 flaws there, which had to be kind of corrected. So I'd rather do it carefully than, हमने कर दिया tender, फिर कोई आया नहीं. The whole very process is set back by 4 or 5 months. I don't want that to happen.
Absolutely. Pandu terminal came up way back in the 1980s, and it was not successful so far.
No, we are handling. I mean, we are handling other cargo, rail bound, roll bound here. But you're right. अभी वो waterborne cargo इतना organized आ नहीं रहा. आएगा.
So time and again, I'm just going to end this in another 5 minutes. Sir, you have been talking about starting scheduled service. Now that appeared interesting to me. Because I'm more of a man of practice. I mean, I don't have.
You've seen the sector longer than any of us, I'm sure. Yeah.
No, I'm just applying my common sense. When you don't have a template, the best way to make the template happen and create the template is through practice, right? So starting a scheduled service will bring out all the flaws in the system, all the loopholes. Wherever the problems are, no one can hide it under the carpet.
Yeah. So I mean, that is the whole reason why we are planning a scheduled service. It's just the model is we have to get it in place, whether it will be done by Shipping Corporation of India's that commercial arm or a private operator or whatever, then we'll get the commodity profile also. Definitely that is very much on, sir.
Commodity profile, accountability of different stakeholders, and we will see that where things are going wrong.
And the operational issues, you never know what might lead to some, something getting stuck. What are the, I mean, we very often, we just ignore the training levels of the crew because in same current with 3 meter per second speed, some captains, some masters are, they are able to navigate it so effortlessly. Whereas others, they start floundering even with so many years of experience. So a lot of learning. In fact, that cargo, which the Tata Steel cargo really taught us a lot. Okay. Even I learned a lot, especially on the protocol route, as you rightly said, between Narayanganj and Sirajganj and Daikhawa. Yes.
So the question is, when are we going to see the services, commercial services launched on these 2 routes? This will start bringing the, creating the, both on NW1 and NW2.
Hopefully. Yeah, certainly on this Calcutta, kya main cha raha hu, Sahibganj bhi. I think end of this year we will have definitely these services and all coming up.
Right. End of 2022.
Yeah, end of 22, definitely. Definitely. I'm giving myself a good cushion here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you so much, sir. Thank you for giving us time, and it has been very
nice.
My
pleasure, Mr. Bose. Always. You know so much. In fact, you know most of the answers yourself. Namaskar.